Hello, everyone. Today we're diving into a true story that'll leave you speechless. Names and details have been changed to protect their privacy. I'm Margaret, and this is about the night my daughter-in-law, Sarah, locked me out of my own son's house at midnight. Imagine standing in the cold, your breath visible, while neighbors stare in shock. What would you do if you saw a daughter-in-law treat her mother-in-law with such cruelty? The truth behind it turned our community upside down. But let me take you back to that awful moment. It was a chilly night, the kind where the stars seem sharper against the dark. I'd been staying with my son, David, and Sarah for a week, helping with their new baby. Things had been tense, but I never expected this. Around 11 p.m., Sarah and I argued something small, about dishes left in the sink. Her voice grew sharp, mine too. And soon, we were shouting. David was at work, night shift at the factory. Sarah's eyes flashed, and she snapped. "Get out before I could process." She pushed me onto the porch and slammed the door. I heard the lock click. I stood there, stunned, in my thin sweater and slippers. The street was quiet, but not empty. Mrs. Ellis, our neighbor, was walking her dog and froze, staring across the road. "Mr. Thompson peered through his curtains. My face burned with shame. I knocked, softly at first, then harder. "Sarah, please," I called, my voice trembling. No answer. The cold seeped into my bones, and I felt exposed, like a beggar, outside my own family's home. Have you ever felt so humiliated you wanted to disappear? Mrs. Ellis hurried over, her dog yapping. "Margaret." "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes wide. I mumbled something about a misunderstanding, but she wasn't buying it. "This is outrageous," she said, loud enough for others to hear. Soon, Mr. Thompson and his wife joined us, their faces a mix of concern and anger. "Locking you out at midnight? That's cruel," Mrs. Thompson said. I tried to downplay it, saying I'd wait for David. But the neighbors' outrage was growing, and I couldn't stop it. By one hour, a small crowd had gathered, whispering, pointing at the house. Someone called David, and I saw his truck pull up, his face pale as he ran to me. "Ma, what happened?" he asked, wrapping his jacket around me. I couldn't speak. The hurt too raw. Sarah opened the door then, her face hard, saying nothing. The neighbors erupted, shouting at her, calling her heartless. David led me inside, but the damage was done. The street was alive with gossip, and I felt their eyes on me, pitying, judging. That night, as I sat in the guest room, my hands shaking, I kept replaying the lock's click, Sarah's cold stare. I'd always tried to be a good mother-in-law, staying out of their way, helping where I could. How had it come to this? The neighbors' anger was a comfort, but it scared me too. They were ready to condemn Sarah, but I sensed something deeper, something I didn't understand. What would you do if your family's drama became the town's scandal? Share your thoughts below, because this was just the start of a story that would shake us all. The night Sarah locked me out left a bruise on my heart. But as I sat in the guest room, David's jacket still around my shoulders, I couldn't stop thinking about how we'd gotten here. The neighbors' voices outside, sharp with outrage, faded into a dull hum as I traced the cracks in my relationship with Sarah. Have you ever wondered when a small misunderstanding turned into a chasm? That's what haunted me. The weight of a family fraying at the seams, When Sarah married David 3 years ago, I was thrilled. She was bright, a nurse with a quick laugh, and she made my son happy. I tried to give them space, visiting only when invited, offering advice only when asked. But after their baby, Emma, was born 6 months ago, things shifted. Sarah seemed stretched thin, her smiles rare. I moved in for a week to help cooking, cleaning, rocking Emma so Sarah could rest. I thought I was easing her load, but her sighs and clipped replies told a different story. The argument that night wasn't just about dishes. It started with me suggesting a different way to soothe Emma's colic. Sarah snapped. "I know what I'm doing. Margaret." I bit my tongue. But later, when I mentioned the messy kitchen, her eyes flared. "You're always criticizing," she shouted. I fired back, saying I was only trying to help. It escalated fast. Words like knives, until she screamed, "Get out and lock the door." Looking back, I saw the tension building, her sharp glances when I rearranged the pantry, her silence when I offered to babysit. Why hadn't I noticed? David tried to smooth things over that night, his voice low. "Ma, she's exhausted." She didn't mean it, but I saw the strain in his eyes, caught between us. I wanted to believe him, but the lock's click echoed in my mind. Sarah hadn't just shut me out of the house, she'd shut me out of their life. I wondered if I'd overstepped, if my help had felt like judgment. As a mother-in-law, you walk a tightrope, and maybe I'd slipped. I thought about Sarah's life. Nursing is grueling, and Emma's sleepless nights didn't help. David's long shifts left Sarah alone most days. And I knew money was tight. Their car needed repairs, and medical bills lingered. I'd offered to chip in, but Sarah always refused. Her pride fierce. Had I pushed too hard, or was something else eating at her? Something she wouldn't share. Have you ever sensed someone's anger, masking a deeper pain? By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Mrs. Ellis stopped by, her face tight. "Sarah's got no excuse. Margaret, locking you out. Unacceptable." I nodded, but my heart wasn't in it. Their support warmed me, but it also scared me. The gossip was spreading, painting Sarah as a villain. I didn't want that. Not yet. I loved David. And Emma was my granddaughter. Whatever Sarah's reasons, I needed to understand them before the community's anger swallowed us all. As I sipped coffee, staring at Emma's crib, I felt a pang. Sarah was a mother now, like me. I remembered my own early days with David, exhausted, scared I wasn't enough. Maybe Sarah was struggling in ways I hadn't seen. But the hurt of that locked door lingered, sharp and cold. I had to talk to her, to find out what drove her to such a cruel act. The neighbors were ready to judge, but I wasn't. Not until I knew the truth. What would you do when love and pain collide? Share your thoughts below. Because I was about to face a storm I couldn't predict. The morning after Sarah locked me out, the neighborhood was a powder keg. I woke to hushed voices outside. Neighbors clustered on the sidewalk, their faces tight with indignation. I pulled my sweater close and stepped onto the porch, my stomach twisting. They were talking about Sarah, my daughter-in-law, as if she'd committed a crime. Have you ever stood by while people condemned someone you're tied to? Even when you're hurting? That's where I was, torn between their fury and my need to protect my family. "Mrs. Alice was leading the charge, her voice sharp. "Margaret, this can't stand," she said, her eyes blazing. "Mr. Thompson, usually so quiet, nodded. Locking you out at midnight. That's heartless." Others joined in. "Mrs. Rivera from down the street. Young Sam who mowed our lawns. They'd either seen me shivering on the porch or heard the story. And they were livid. To them, Sarah had crossed a line, disrespecting not just me but the values we all held dear. I wanted to explain, to say it was a fight gone wrong. But the memory of that locked door silenced me. By noon, the Outrage had organized. A group gathered at Mrs. Ellis's house, planning to confront Sarah. I trailed behind, my legs heavy, dreading the escalation. The living room was packed, voices overlapping. "She needs to apologize, Mrs. Rivera declared. Someone suggested a public shaming. Others wanted David to intervene. I stood by the door, my heart racing. Their anger was real, but it felt like a wave, ready to sweep my family away. Have you ever felt like you're losing control of your own story? I tried to speak. "Please, let me talk to her first," I said, my voice shaky. Heads turned, eyes softening for a moment. "Mrs. Ellis touched my arm. We're doing this for you, Margaret." Sarah went too far. I nodded, but inside I was crumbling. Their support was a lifeline, but it came at Sarah's expense. Was I betraying her by not stopping them? Or betraying myself by wanting to shield her after what she'd done? David wasn't there, he'd gone to work, leaving me to face the storm alone. As the meeting ended, Mr. Thompson pulled me aside. "We're going to her this afternoon," he said. "She needs to face you." I begged him to wait, to give me time. But he shook his head. "You've suffered enough." I watched him leave, feeling helpless. The neighborhood's fury was a force now, moving faster than I could. I needed to reach Sarah before they did, to understand why she'd locked me out. But with their plans in motion, I wasn't sure I could. Back home, I found a note from Mrs. Rivera. "We're with you, Margaret." It should have comforted me, but it didn't. Their loyalty was to me, not Sarah or David, and that divide cut deep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a photo of Emma, my granddaughter. Sarah was her mother, part of my family. The humiliation of that night was raw, but so was my love for them. I sensed Sarah was hiding something. Her eyes that night weren't just angry. They were desperate. What would you do if your community turned on your family? Share your thoughts below. Because I was terrified of what was coming next. The neighborhood's fury was a fire, spreading fast. But all I could think about was Sarah. Why had she locked me out? As I sat in the kitchen, the note from Mrs. Rivera crumpled in my hand. I kept seeing Sarah's face that night. Anger. Yes. But something else. Something broken. Have you ever known deep down there's more to someone's cruelty than meets the eye? That's what pushed me to look beyond the locked door. Even as the neighbors' voices clamored for justice, I started with the days before the fight. Sarah had been on edge, snapping over small things like when I folded Emma's clothes wrong or left a cup out. I chalked it up to new mom stress. But now I wondered, during my stay, I'd noticed her phone buzzing constantly, her face tightening as she read messages. Once, I overheard her on a call, her voice low. "I can't right now, okay?" She'd hung up quickly when she saw me, forcing a smile. At the time, I let it go, not wanting to pry. But now it felt like a piece of the puzzle. I thought about her life with David. They'd always seemed solid. But lately, David was quieter, his shifts longer. Sarah was alone with Emma most days, juggling nursing and motherhood. I'd seen her hands tremble as she fed the baby, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. Had I misread her stress as hostility? Or was something bigger weighing her down? I needed to know. So I tried calling her. No answer. I texted David, asking if Sarah was okay. He replied, "She's just tired, Ma." But it felt like a half-truth. The next morning, I went to their house while Sarah was at the hospital for her shift. David was home, rocking Emma. "Ma, let it go," he said, when I brought up the lockout. But I pressed, asking if Sarah was struggling with something, money, work, anything. He hesitated, then admitted, "She's been stressed, but she won't talk about it." That was enough to confirm my suspicions. Sarah was hiding something. And it wasn't just about dishes or my advice. I searched the guest room where I'd stayed, feeling a twinge of guilt. In a drawer, I found a letter from Sarah's hospital, marked confidential. I didn't open it, couldn't cross that line, but its presence was a clue. Was she in trouble at work? Facing a lawsuit? My mind spun with possibilities. Have you ever found a hint that someone you care about is sinking, but they won't let you in? That's where I was. Holding a secret. I wasn't sure I should touch. By afternoon, the neighbors' plans were in motion. Mrs. Ellis had rallied a group to confront Sarah when she got home. I begged her to wait, saying I was handling it. But she shook her head. "Margaret, she disrespected you. We can't ignore that." Their loyalty was fierce, but it blinded them to what I was starting to see. Sarah's act wasn't just cruelty. It was a cry from someone buckling under pressure. I had to talk to her before the neighborhood's judgment did. As I left David's house, the letter's weight lingered in my mind. I didn't know what it held, but I knew Sarah was carrying something heavy, something that made her lash out. The community was ready to crucify her, but I wasn't. I needed the truth, and I needed it fast, before their anger tore my family apart. What would you do if you suspected a painful secret behind someone's actions? Share your thoughts below, because I was running out of time to find out. The hospital letter I'd found stayed with me. A silent wait as I walked back to my own house. Sarah was hiding something, and the neighborhood's growing anger only made it harder to reach her. Their voices, Mrs. Ellis, Mr. Thompson echoed in my head, calling Sarah cruel, heartless. But I kept seeing her eyes that night. Not just angry, but lost. Have you ever felt torn between condemning someone and wanting to save them? That's where I was. My heart split between pain and a stubborn hope for my family. I kept replaying our argument. Dishes. Emma's colic small sparks that shouldn't have led to a lockout. But Sarah's sharpness had been building. Her patience frayed long before that night. I thought it was me, my presence grating on her. But the letter suggested something else. Was she in trouble at work, struggling with more than motherhood? The thought gnawed at me, and with it came guilt. Had I been too quick to judge her, too focused on my own hurt to see her pain? As a mother-in-law, you're supposed to bridge gaps. But I felt like I'd widened them. The neighbor's support was a double-edged sword. Mrs. Rivera dropped off a casserole, her eyes soft. "Margaret, you don't deserve this," she said. I smiled. But her words stung. They saw me as the victim, Sarah as the villain. And that divide was tearing my family apart. I wanted to tell them there was more to it, that Sarah wasn't herself. But how could I when I didn't know the truth? Their pity was kind, but it trapped me in a role I hated. Poor Margaret, betrayed by her daughter-in-law. I tried calling Sarah again, my hands shaking as the phone rang. Voicemail? Sarah, it's me, I said, my voice cracking. Please, let's talk. Silence answered, and it felt like another door shutting. I thought about David, caught in the middle. He'd always been my rock. But now he was stretched thin, working nights, trying to keep peace. Had I leaned on him too much, expecting him to fix this? The thought made my chest ache. I was supposed to hold this family together, but I was failing. By evening, the neighborhood's plans were escalating. Mrs. Ellis told me they'd drafted a letter for Sarah, demanding an apology by the weekend, or they'd take it to the community board. I pleaded for time, saying I'd talk to her, but their eyes were hard. She locked you out, Margaret. That's not right. I nodded, but their anger scared me. They were ready to punish Sarah, and I wasn't sure she deserved it, not until I understood why. Have you ever had to protect someone from a crowd's judgment, even when they hurt you? Alone that night, I sat with Emma's baby blanket, one I'd knitted before she was born. Sarah had thanked me then, her smile genuine. That woman was still in there. I had to believe it. But the pain of that locked door lingered, sharp as the midnight cold. I needed to know what drove her to it. But with the neighbors closing in, time was slipping away. I clutched the blanket, praying for a chance to reach her. What would you do when your family's breaking, and you're the only one holding on? Share your thoughts below. Because I was about to face a reckoning I couldn't avoid. The neighborhood was a storm ready to break. Their anger at Sarah, now a plan in motion. I stood on my porch. The hospital letters weighed heavy in my mind as I watched Mrs. Ellis and others gather across the street. Their voices carried sharp, unyielding, demanding Sarah face consequences. Have you ever seen a community rally for you, only to feel it's tearing your family apart? That's where I was, desperate to reach Sarah before their judgment did. Knowing she was hiding a truth I needed to understand. Mrs. Ellis had their letter ready, signed by a dozen neighbors, calling for Sarah to apologize publicly or face a community board review. They planned to deliver it that evening when she got home from her shift. I tried to reason with them, my voice thin. Please, give me a day, I said. Mrs. Ellis frowned. Margaret, she locked you out at midnight? We can't let that slide. I nodded, but my heart sank. Their loyalty was fierce, but it blinded them to the possibility that Sarah was breaking under something bigger than our fight. I went to David's house, hoping to catch Sarah before the neighbors did. David was there, feeding Emma, his face tired. Ma, this is getting out of hand, he said. When I told him about the letter, I asked him point blank, what's going on with Sarah? He sighed, rubbing his eyes. She's been off, Ma. Won't tell me much, but she's scared about something at work. That word scared hit me. The letter, her sharp edges, the lockout, it was starting to connect. I waited until Sarah pulled into the driveway. Her nurse's scrubs wrinkled, her face drawn. Before I could speak, Mrs. Ellis and Mr. Thompson marched up, letter in hand. "Sarah, this is unacceptable." "Mrs. Ellis said, thrusting it at her. Sarah's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You don't know anything," she snapped, pushing past them into the house. I followed, ignoring Mrs. Ellis's protests. Inside, Sarah was shaking, clutching the letter. "They're ganging up on me," she whispered. I softened my voice. "Sarah, talk to me." "What's happening?" She hesitated, then broke. "It's work," she said, her voice cracking. "I made a mistake, a patient's medication. They're investigating me. I could lose my license." My breath caught. That was the letter. The secret she'd been carrying. She'd been terrified, lashing out because she felt cornered. "Why didn't you tell us?" I asked. She looked away. I was ashamed. "And you kept hovering?" "Margaret," I snapped. Her words stung. But I saw her pain now. Raw and real. Have you ever seen someone's truth and felt your anger shift? The neighbors were still outside, their voices rising. I stepped out, raising my hands. "Please, stop. Sarah's in trouble, not evil. She needs help, not this. Mrs. Ellis crossed her arms. "Trouble doesn't excuse cruelty." I nodded, but stood firm. "Give us time to fix this." They grumbled, but backed off. The letter left on the porch. Inside, Sarah was crying, David holding her. I felt relief, but also dread. The truth was out, but the neighborhood's anger wasn't gone, and our family was still fragile. I looked at Sarah. Her head bowed, and felt a mix of hurt and hope. She'd locked me out. But now I saw why a woman overwhelmed, scared of losing everything. I had to protect her, even if the neighbors didn't understand yet. Time was short, and I needed to bridge this gap before it became a chasm. What would you do when the truth changes everything? But the world's still judging. Share your thoughts below. Because we were far from healed, Sarah's confession hit me like a wave, washing away some of the anger I'd carried since that midnight lockout. She was facing a work investigation, her nursing license at risk, and she'd been drowning in shame. As I stood in their living room, the neighbor's letter crumpled on the porch outside. I saw her not as the villain they'd painted, but as a woman breaking under pressure. Have you ever had the truth shift your heart, even when the hurt's still fresh? That's where I was, needing to protect my family, while the neighborhood's fury loomed. I called Mrs. Ellis that night, my voice urgent. "Sarah's in trouble at work," I said. "She's scared, not cruel. Please, hold off." She sighed, unconvinced. "Margaret, she still locked you out. We need accountability." I understood, but I begged for time, promising to sort it out. She agreed to pause the confrontation, but I knew the community's patience was thin. They wanted justice, and Sarah's story, raw as it was, might not sway them. I had to act fast. The next morning, I sat with Sarah and David at their kitchen table, Emma asleep in her crib. Sarah looked drained, her eyes red. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Margaret," she said, her voice small. "I was so scared of losing everything, my job, our home. You were just there." Her honesty cut, but it also cleared the air. I admitted I'd overstepped, my help feeling like judgment. David, quiet until now, spoke up. "We're all messed up here. Let's fix it." Have you ever felt a family start to heal, even when it's messy? I asked Sarah about the investigation. She explained a medication error with a patient caught by her supervisor. No one was harmed, but the hospital was strict, and she faced a review that could end her career. She'd kept it from David, from me, thinking she could handle it alone. I was wrong, she said, tears falling. I reached for her hand, my own eyes wet. You don't have to do this alone, I said. For the first time in months, she didn't pull away. We agreed she'd meet with the neighbors, explain herself, and apologize. David offered to go with her, but Sarah shook her head. I need to face this. I admired her courage, even if I worried about the community's reaction. That evening, we walked to Mrs. Ellis's house, where a small group waited. Sarah stood tall, her voice steady. I was wrong to lock Margaret out, she said. I was scared of my job's at risk, and I took it out on her. I'm sorry. She laid it all bare. Her mistake, her fear, her regret. The room was quiet. Mrs. Thompson spoke first. That's a lot, Sarah, but it doesn't erase what you did. Others nodded, their faces hard, but Mrs. Rivera, softer, said, We've all snapped under stress. Margaret's forgiven her. Maybe we can too. The group was split, some willing to listen, others holding firm. Mrs. Ellis looked at me. What do you want? Margaret, I took a breath. I want my family whole. Sarah's trying. Give her a chance. As we left, Sarah whispered, Thank you. I nodded, but the weight wasn't gone. The truth was, out Sarah's error, her fear, but the neighbors' trust was fragile, and our family's wounds were fresh. We'd taken a step, but the path ahead was uncertain. What would you do when forgiveness hangs in the balance, and everyone's watching? Share your thoughts below, because we were about to find out if we could rebuild. The meeting at Mrs. Ellis's house left a fragile hope in the air, but the neighborhood's eyes still lingered on us. Sarah's apology had cracked the ice, but trust was a long road. As we walked back to David's house, her hand brushed mine, a quiet thank you. I felt the weight of that midnight lockout easing, but not gone. Have you ever stood at the edge of forgiveness, knowing it's a choice you make every day? That's where we were, piecing our family back together under the community's gaze. The next day, Sarah faced the hospital review. She came home pale but relieved, no license lost, just a warning and extra training. David hugged her, and I saw a spark of their old strength. I stayed on, helping with Emma, but differently now, asking Sarah what she needed, not assuming. She softened, even thanking me for a meal one night. It was small, but it was a start. We talked more, about her fears, my mistakes. I felt judged. She admitted. I nodded. I felt pushed out. Honesty hurt, but it healed. Too, the neighbors watched. Some warming, others wary. Mrs. Rivera invited Sarah to help with the community garden, a gesture of trust. Sarah went, planting seeds beside women who'd once glared at her. Mrs. Ellis was slower to thaw, but when Sarah fixed her porch step, she offered a nod. Keep at it, she said. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was enough for now. Have you ever seen a community soften, one act at a time? That's what gave me hope. David stepped up, too, cutting back his shifts to be home more. He and Sarah started counseling, learning to share their burdens. I saw my son again, the boy who'd always tried to fix things. One evening, he pulled me aside. Ma, I should have seen how bad it was. I'm sorry, I hugged him, tears in my eyes. We're all learning. David. The lockout had exposed our cracks. Sarah's fear, my overreach, David's absence, but it also forced us to face them. The neighborhood's anger faded as Sarah showed up helping at the market, apologizing to those she'd snapped at. Some, like Mr. Thompson, held grudges, but most saw her effort. I spoke at a community meeting, my voice steady. Sarah messed up, but so did I. We're family, and we're trying. Please, stand with us. Mrs. Rivera clapped, and others joined. A quiet wave of support. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The hurt from that night still lingered, a scar we'd carry. But so did our love for Emma, for each other. The community taught me about loyalty, rallying when I was down, but also about grace, giving Sarah a chance to make things right. What would you do if you had to rebuild a family under a town's scrutiny? Share your thoughts below, because that's what we did, day by day. As I write this, Sarah's in the kitchen, laughing with David as they feed Emma. It's not a fairy tale, but it's ours. We're healing, with the neighborhood watching. Some cheering, some waiting. I believe in us, in the power of truth and time. Thanks for listening. Please, like, comment, and share your own stories. Let's keep talking about family, forgiveness, and second chances. Margaret, a devoted mother-in-law, recounts the painful night her daughter-in-law Sarah locked her out at midnight after a heated argument, sparking outrage among neighbors. As the community condemns Sarah, Margaret grapples with humiliation and love, sensing a deeper reason for Sarah's cruelty. She uncovers Sarah's secret, a work investigation threatening her nursing license, driving her to lash out in fear. The neighbors demand justice, but Margaret pleads for understanding, confronting Sarah and learning her shame. In a tense community meeting, Sarah apologizes, revealing her mistake and regret. Over time, she rebuilds trust through small acts, while Margaret and David support her. The story, told in Margaret's heartfelt voice, explores family conflict, community judgment, and redemption, ending with a hopeful, imperfect reconciliation. It asks, can forgiveness mend a broken family? Share your experiences below to keep this conversation alive.